Is it possible to go backwards to go forwards? Well, that's the question that I address today. If I can keep the camera on me. There we go. Is it possible to go backwards to go forwards? Well, that is the question we're going to answer today. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and at the recommendation of someone smarter than myself, I've been reading Out of the Strange Planet, a trilogy by C.S. Lewis, currently finishing up the last book in the series, That Hideous Strength. I think the camera is still wonky on me. Beautiful. So, That Hideous Strength. The lesson of that book, which is fantastically written, would recommend it if you are both a science fiction and philosophy nerd, as some of us may seem to be yet. I recommend it highly, the whole series, but That Hideous Strength in particular. The lesson of the whole book can kind of be summed up like this, and this is going to connect to the normal kind of dating stuff I've gotten into a little bit here. But basically the whole book gets summed up in this sentence, and this is not one of C.S. Lewis's sentences, this is my sentence. We find knowledge going forward. We find wisdom looking backwards. What do I mean by that? Knowledge is found in progress. Knowledge is found in science, in experimentation, in rigorous study. That's where knowledge is found. Knowledge is just stuff. It's important stuff, but it's stuff. Wisdom is looking backwards. Wisdom looks back at the knowledge we've attained and says, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Maybe it was a great idea. Maybe we should have done this. Maybe we should have done that. Wisdom is simply discerning knowledge. It's knowledge that has some level of discernment to it and a recognition that not all knowledge is beneficial. And we see that a lot of times today in the kind of the fake news world, right? We know a lot now. The internet in general is a fire hose of knowledge straight to your brain. You open your phone, you stare at it for a little bit, and boom, you have knowledge. All sorts of knowledge. The internet does not give you wisdom. We used to learn wisdom in school. It used to be a big part of curriculum, was teaching not just teaching you memorization stuff, but this showed up mostly in like a civics class. Taught you how to be a citizen. Part of being a citizen was being a discerning member of the citizenry. Someone who was of the voting public should know how to vote and what it actually means to cast a vote. How important that is. How you have to think carefully and critically about the choices you make. Critical thought is wisdom. Now, don't get it twisted here. I'm not saying that the sciences aren't important, and I'm not saying the humanities carry a greater weight. But we live in a world currently where a company has actually taken the time out of their day to resurrect an extinct species. The dire wolf has been resurrected by whatever the name of that company is. They're all over the news right now. Resurrected them. And we maybe should wonder if resurrecting an extinct species is a good idea. The same company is trying to resurrect the woolly mammoth. Is that such a good thought? The woolly mammoth hasn't existed for quite some time. And most of the biomes where the woolly mammoth would have lived have changed a great deal. I'm not one to think that science is ever developed for novelty. It never is. This is a big scientific breakthrough. We have the ability to un-extinct species, but it's still not great. The fact that we can do it doesn't mean that we should do it. And that's a little bit of a tangent, but it's an important tangent because it leads into the overall premise, which is that knowledge looks forward, is found looking forward. Wisdom is found looking backwards. Hindsight is 2020 is another way to say it, I guess. But hindsight is 2020 is a little bit different. Hindsight is 2020 is like, oh man, I can't believe I made that mistake. No, wisdom is more of discerning of a body of knowledge, right? You look at the body of science writ large, let's say, and you say gravity's really important. 9.81 meters per second squared is a big deal. We need to know that, and understand the effect it has on different things so that we can do better engineering, so that we can build better buildings. But in the building of better buildings, should we throw out the old, beautiful architecture that we used to have? I mean, have we built a Notre Dame cathedral in however many hundreds of years since the cathedral was built? Doubt it. I doubt it very much. C.S. Lewis takes aim at academics in the entirety of Out of the Strange Planet trilogy, but especially in That Hideous Strength. Not because academia is in and of itself bad. Academia is very important, but it is academics who tend to fall into the trap more often than not that anything in the past should be thrown out the second it's found to be even remotely irrelevant. The baby must be thrown out with the bathwater in order to usher in new knowledge, to usher in this sort of inexorable progress. Academics really go in for that kind of thing. We see that as well in the current development of relationships, particularly in the social media age, but we see it particularly in the development of not just dating relationships, but relationships just in general, intimacy. And I don't mean intimacy in only the physical sense of the word. Intimacy is critically important in every aspect of life, not just in your romantic relationship. Intimacy is important with friends. It's important with even acquaintances to decide how much intimacy you should have. Intimacy is just being close with someone. And we have this idea that we have to kind of, in order to progress forward, we have to throw out all the wisdom from the past. Now, we know on this channel, I've been very open about it. Again, I try to be a Christian who talks to everybody, right? I try to be very open about the fact that most of my beliefs are rooted as much as they can be in Christianity. And when I say as much as they can be, meaning that I'm not perfect, no one can be, and Christians, I think, just are more likely to admit it. But there's a thought process that there were a lot of old habits in dating, particularly as we develop certain movements. I'm not going to say which movements those were because it's going to bring up a lot of unneeded attention if I do bring up those movements. And I say that only not to get caught up in the same fallacy, which is the throwing out of the baby with the bathwater. Looking backwards, we can say there was definitely things about relationships we needed to change from maybe the 1940s and the 1950s. But that doesn't mean it was all such a bad thing. It doesn't mean it was all crazy. The idea of a nuclear family is kind of a big deal, and it's borne out in the sociology literature when you read it and you study it. It's borne out that the nuclear family of some variety, we can admit to ourselves that maybe the definition of the nuclear family, legally speaking at least, needed to change. But throwing out the idea of family, of kids, of all of that, treads into some very dangerous waters. I was watching that fount of knowledge last night, the Whatever podcast, and there was a girl on there, and again, they are not going out and sourcing Rhodes Scholars for this show, or maybe Rhodes Scholars just are too busy to go on the show. But this one woman was discussing how illegal immigration was important to the country because we had a declining birth rate and a declining population rate, which is an argument, I guess. It exists in the realm of arguments to be made. But that is an argument that we might say to ourselves, that's knowledge, but it's certainly not wisdom. That's a young woman saying, oh, I have these two data points. I have illegal immigration and I have declining birth rate. Well, why don't I just solve them in one stroke and just say there is no such thing as illegal immigration, and that will solve our declining birth rate situation. I don't know why she was making this connection. I don't know that she was qualified to make that connection, but she made the connection. I now have that piece of knowledge, and now so do you. Wisdom might look on that and say, well, why don't we just encourage United States citizens of every race, religion, background, and creed to raise families? Why do we discourage that? What are we doing that is discouraging that, such to the point that it becomes even something to be considered that we should essentially import somebody else's citizens and just have them do that for us? That gets perilously close to the dystopian reality of That Hideous Strength, where the very idea of birth, of life, of organic matter is thrown out as just one of those old-fashioned ideas. And it's proven that yes, you can throw it out, but that's a dangerous baby to throw out with the bathwater. I merely think, and people can feel free to disagree with me on this, they always do, and I'm sure if you have a mean comment, you'll leave it. And if not, you'll like and subscribe. We're currently at 69 followers. Nice. And it would be lovely to get up to 70 because the joke can only go on for so long. I think it's dangerous to throw out what is old simply because it is old. We should build beautiful cathedrals. We should build beautiful buildings. And it should be not a goal we're afraid of to raise a family. And it should be a goal. It doesn't mean you're doing it tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're doing it with the first guy you come across. No. But it means that it should be a goal. How or why it fits into your life is up to you. I can't tell you how to solve that problem. Anyways, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Look forward for knowledge. Look backward for wisdom. That hideous strength, I like it. The C.S. Lewis estate has in no way, shape, or form sponsored this video. I just think you should read his books. They've been recommended to me by people smarter than me. They're pretty good. Anyways, I'm out of time. Thanks for joining me. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.